Weird and scary things are going on at the bottom of the ocean. This is so much so that millions, perhaps even billions of deep-sea creatures are leaving their comfort zone and heading fast towards the surface. But why? Just a few days back, around 150 killer whales were found on the beaches of Tasmania, Australia in stranded conditions. Some of them were already killed and others were in such a panic that when people tried to push them back to water, they would not go. These are also the same killer whales that normally control the ocean well into the depths of about 0.6 miles. The top predators which even other animals in the sea fear. But now the question is, why should these killer whales be so frightened? Immediately after this, more than 700,000 turtles were seen on various beaches in Odisha, a place along the Indian seashore. Amazingly, these turtles belong to a species, which is normally found about 500 feet deep off the Mexican coast. The strange sea creature was the talk of the town in a viral video shot on a beach in Mexico, over 20 feet long, with a rubbery body and glowing skin. This was not a normal fish. It was an oarfish, which seldom appear to surface, a deep open sea fish. But today, in most of the countries, dead oarfish are appearing on coasts. And it is also predicted according to medieval beliefs that when an oarfish starts appearing on the surface, it is only a precursor of a massive disaster about to happen to the world. Is all due to fabled Leviathan? Yes. That very sea monster of the depths which preyeth in those darkest depths of the sea, yeah, and with the 100 and more ships of the Bermuda's Triangle, which it is said she has drawn to Davy Jones and sunk, at the cost of some 1,000 or so human lives. And now, supposing that this Leviathan is actually having surface, it may be carrying with it destruction of the most appalling kind. Or is there a possibility of an even bigger and more dreadful danger hanging over us on the planet? Something that could be used to destroy even the human civilization? The response may be yes. And us, the cause of the calling of this disaster, man. But how? And why? These deep marine creatures are migrating out of their homes and swimming to surface as though to die. Approximately 3/4 of the world is submerged in the ocean, large unknown worlds with untold secrets. And this is where it comes in as shocking. Only 5% of oceans have been explored out of human reach. So this is still only 5% of the share, and the rest 95% is just a mystery to us. Deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, commonly referred to as the Challenger Deep, is also at the center of this puzzle. It is as deep as 36,000 feet. So to get that in perspective, you could take Mount Everest and drop it into it and it would be drowned. Even 1% of the sunlight can penetrate such depths, and the surroundings are black and crushing. Water pressure is so intense that the human body would be ripped apart in an instant there. And yet there, in this fierce land, there are things so weird and wild that you would not believe could be. As an example, we may refer to the deep-sea anglerfish. This fierce monster has a small whiny hook on its head. Smaller fish that are lured by the light simply get closer only to be gulped down the moment they are too close. This animal is deemed one of the most lethal predators of the deep sea. It is also referred to as the Black Sea Devil. And it normally lives over 0.6 miles deep below the ground. However, not long ago, one was discovered close to the Canary Islands. Recently, a fisherman in Russia caught a weird deep-sea creature that rapidly became a viral hit on social media. When people started referring to it as an alien, it turned out to be a smooth lumpfish, a very weird creature whose body looks like a human brain. However, in primordial beliefs, nothing compares in terms of bad omen more than the sight of the oarfish close to the coast. An animal that has long been linked to horrifying historical catastrophes. Take this as an example. In the 15th century, sailors off Greenland and Iceland spotted what seemed to be a huge fish along the coast that had eyes that shone like stars. They considered it a foreign fish. Within a matter of days after the sighting, a huge sea storm hit the area and dozens of ships sunk and thousands of people lost their lives. It was in 1855 when these silvery oarfish swimming near the surface were spotted by fishermen of Japan. Just days after, an earthquake that devastated cities occurred. Thereafter, many people in Japan have believed that whenever the sea god is unhappy, he sends oarfish to the surface to raise alarm before the rampage. It is February 26, 2011. Over 70 oarfishes died and beached on different Japanese shores. Cold could not live so near the surface. And only a few weeks later, on March 11, 2011, one of the most devastating tsunamis in history was recorded in Japan. It killed more than 20,000 individuals, displaced more than 1 million, destroyed major cities, and exceeded $230 billion in damages. Right at the same time, oarfish sightings were recorded not only in Japan but also in a number of states between Mexico and the Pacific Rim. Now many people assume that the next natural disaster which is going to accumulate might not be confined to a particular country or continent. Rather, it may wreak extensive destruction all over the world. And with the explanation of science, the answer is obvious. It is our fault as humans. Due to our deeds, the killer whales no longer feel any freedom to even remain in the water because they are afraid to do so. Anglerfish, which are fierce creatures, are leaving their homes and going to the surface. Millions of turtles and fish are dying along the shores of the deep sea. So what is the reason behind this? This horrendous transformation is brought about by three principal reasons. First, number one is global warming. Sunlight only penetrates to a depth of about 650 feet into the ocean. The reason why the deep sea is always cold is because of this. And with time, these animals have come to adapt to such cold temperatures. However, the result of global warming is that the temperature of the ocean surface is increasing day by day. And that is the heat which is now being carried further and further into the ocean. The issue is that oxygen cannot simply move on to the cold waters that are close to the extremely warm waters. Now, that is a hazardous decline in oxygen in the deep sea coupled with the fact that the climate is heating up. Consequently, such animals are unable to breathe anymore. And to die in a fight, to live a fool. And in a desperate endeavor to live, they are driven out to the surface. And that is not all. The ocean water is becoming increasingly acidic as carbon dioxide levels rise. This is the second major culprit. When CO2 dissolves into seawater, it forms carbonic acid, gradually lowering the pH of the ocean. For marine life that depends on calcium carbonate, such as shellfish and coral reefs, this is catastrophic. Their shells and skeletons begin to weaken and dissolve, leaving them vulnerable to predators and disease. Entire ecosystems collapse when the building blocks of life vanish. Coral reefs, often called the rainforests of the sea, are dying at an alarming rate, taking thousands of species with them. The third factor is perhaps the most destructive of all: human greed through deep-sea mining. In our relentless pursuit of rare minerals for electronics and energy, we have begun tearing up the ocean floor. Giant machines churn through sediments, releasing toxic metals and clouds of debris that suffocate fragile habitats. Creatures that evolved over millions of years are being annihilated in weeks. Scientists warn that this destruction could be irreversible, yet the operations continue, hidden from the public eye in the planet's most remote regions. Adding to these environmental crises are geological forces beyond our control. Beneath the ocean's crust, tectonic plates constantly grind and shift, building tension until it releases in devastating earthquakes or tsunamis. Deep-sea creatures are highly sensitive to these pressure changes. They sense the vibrations long before humans detect them, which is why mass migrations to the surface often precede natural disasters. This pattern has been documented time and time again, from ancient legends to modern science. So the question remains: are these recent strandings just coincidences, or signs of an impending global catastrophe? Could humanity's actions be pushing nature to its breaking point, awakening forces we cannot comprehend? Or, as some fear, is something ancient stirring in the darkness, something that was never meant to rise again?